everybody. Thank you for having me. Oh, this is handy. These are my notes. Thank you for having me here today. And happy Earth Day to you all. So I want to talk to you today about Earth Day. I want to talk to you about water. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my accidental career. Because despite everything you heard, nothing I'm doing, I have done in the last 40 years was planned. It all just sort of happened a certain way. But there's a lesson in all that I want to share with you. First of all, there's an astronomer. Who's heard of Carl Sagan? Anybody? Oh, good. In his book Cosmos, Carl Sagan said that if any one of us was randomly inserted into the universe, the odds we would land on or near a planet are 1 in a billion, trillion. Do you know why? The odds are so small? Hey, Luke. Because space is mostly space. Matter of fact, the Voyager spacecraft, which was launched in 1976, just left our solar system a few months ago. It's 12 billion miles away from our sun. Anybody know how long it's going to be before it reaches the next star? 40,000 years. Because it's space. Space is space. Planets are that far apart. Suns are that far apart. So the odds you would land on or near a planet, randomly inserted into the universe, are 1 in a billion, trillion. The odds you would land on or near a planet that's inhabitable is far, far smaller. Who knows why? Because there are so few planets that have water. You have to have water. Water is life. Matter of fact, in March of 2009, March 6, 2009, NASA launched the Kepler spacecraft. I love astronomy and I love following our space program. I find it very exciting. And to me, the most exciting of our space programs is the Kepler program. Anybody know what the Kepler program is? What is it? It's looking for planets in the habitable zone of stars outside of our solar system. Which means what? Planets that can support liquid water. They're looking for planets that can support liquid water because water is life. On our planet, water is life, and there's not as much of it as you think. Almost 3/4 of our planet, 2/3 to 3/4 of our planet, is covered in water. 2/3 of that is frozen in glaciers. 2.75% of the water on Earth is fresh water, water that we can drink. But of all the water on Earth, the amount of water that's accessible to us, the fresh water that we can use for drinking, for agriculture, and for our daily needs, is 0.007% of the water on the planet. 0.007%. That's how precious water is on our planet. I was randomly inserted into the universe in Yonkers, New York. And growing up in Yonkers, New York, there was only 3 things that we knew about the Hudson River. And Yonkers is right next to the Hudson River. The one thing we knew about the Hudson River was the good Lord put it there to separate New York from New Jersey. not a slam on New Jersey, because when I say this in New Jersey, everybody applauds, just so you understand. But from my point of view as a kid, that was the big deal about the Hudson River, is that I could stand and see another state from the Yonkers shoreline. The other thing we knew about the Hudson River was we were not supposed to go near it. Now, when I was growing up, we didn't use the word pollution. Matter of fact, the word environment wasn't really a popular word. We had an entirely different vocabulary. In my era, what we knew about water was it was either clean or dirty. If it was dirty water, then it might cause polio. And that's pretty much how kids of my generation looked at water. It either caused polio or it didn't. And and growing up in a city, growing up an urban kid, we pretty much decided that all the water was dirty. And eventually, when my parents could afford to own a home, I lived not very far, actually a half block from a large county park called Tibbetsbrook Park. And it has streams flowing through it and so on. So we used to go down there and walk, hop rocks across the stream. And if we got ourselves wet, the first thing we would do is go home and wash the polio off of ourselves. Because we actually thought that that's what happened. And matter of fact, our idea of clean water was anything that smelled like chlorine. That was clean water. And that's about as much as I knew about the environment growing up. I lived in a city next to a river. The river separated me from New Jersey. I wasn't supposed to go near that water. Now, in my parents' generation, they grew up very differently. My father learned how to swim on the Hudson River. Matter of fact, the way they learned how to swim was that Monsignor Brown from St. Peter's would take all the kids down to the river. They'd get in a wooden skiff. He'd row them out into the middle of the river, and one by one, he'd tie a rope around their waist. And he'd pick them up and throw them in the river and yell, "Swim!" And so my father learned how to swim. And my father said the first time they threw him in, he said he started going like this, and Monsignor Brown said, "You're not swimming." And my father started going like this. He said, "Hey, you're swimming." And that's how they all learned how to swim. My mother's father was a fisherman on the Hudson River. And when my parents were dating, their idea of a great date was to go rowing on the Hudson. But I was part of the first generation that learned that the Hudson River was something you stayed away from. There was never a big headline about it. There weren't any stories about it. It was just something that was accepted as the price of progress. Because I was part of a post-World War II generation that was rebuilding America. And we rebuilt America with factories. We rebuilt America with manufacturing. Rivers were necessary to factories and manufacturing. For power, for processed water, but for what else? Waste. They were convenient.